may bring up the question, what does the fire department do when a fire hydrant isn't available? Here to answer that question and give us some more insight is West Bloomfield Fire Department Training Captain Jeff Latkowski with us on the Splash Live. Captain Latkowski, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We always enjoy being on the show with you guys.
Yeah, happy to have you on to talk about this topic because fire hydrants play a key role in responses, of course, to fires in our community and in neighboring communities. And throughout the year, especially in the winter, we hear about the issues that our fire departments, not only in Greater West Bloomfield, but beyond, have when those hydrants are blocked. This time of the year, how common is it that we see obstructions that may make your job more difficult responding to some of these fires?
Yeah, it's a great question. So usually this time of year, it's more vegetation and things that kind of hide or hamper us being able to find the fire hydrant. As you mentioned, in the wintertime, a lot of times with plowing or just a lot of snow, it can make it difficult for the firefighters to find the hydrant. With that said, it's, if you're out there and you do have a fire hydrant in your yard, if you could go out there, kind of clear out the vegetation, and then wintertime, just make sure that, you're shoveling around that hydrant. It makes our job a lot easier and, we're more effective if there is a fire out there. So the other thing is we do have quite a few areas in the township that do not have fire hydrants. So this weekend we did some tanker training, which is really kind of a portable fire hydrant that allows us to still actively put out a fire if there's no hydrant in that area.
And so when you bring these tankers in, how does that help to supplement a fire hydrant? Because that fire hydrant's connected to a water system, so you've got plentiful amounts of water to then tap into to respond. What does the tanker bring that maybe helps to offset the lack of a fire hydrant?
That's a great question. So the tanker holds 3,000 gallons of water. Our fire trucks hold about 300 gallons of water, 300 to 500. And what that does is it allows us to effectively start attacking the fire while other fire trucks can do a relay, which could be anywhere from 2 to 4 different fire trucks, about 1,000 feet distance, where we can tie into a fire hydrant, and over a distance of about 1,000 to 2,000 feet, we can then tie into the fire truck. But that tanker right there with the 3,000 gallons gives us that time and the water needed to effectively put out a fire.
And typically when you're dealing with a fire, whether it's in a home or it's in a business, both of which we've seen in recent months here in West Bloomfield, how much water do you typically need to be able to respond to even a smaller fire in our community?
Yes, so like a normal, like a kitchen fire or a fire that we call like room and contents that's within a family room, a bedroom, we can usually do with the tank water that is in the fire truck itself. As that fire starts to grow, if we have a fully involved house fire, that's when you're talking hundreds, thousands of gallons of water to try to effectively put that out.
Jeff Latkowski is with us on the Splash Live. Training captain with the West Bloomfield Township Fire Department. They had training over the weekend recently here with their tanker, which provides 3,000 gallons of water when they bring that out to respond to a fire or another emergency in our community. You can learn even more about that on their Facebook page, facebook.com/WB Fire Department, for even more information. And Captain Latkowski, I'd imagine this is also helpful in your partnerships with outside communities and in their partnerships with you also when you have multiple incidents to respond to and you're in need of that supplemental water. How does this help to make West Bloomfield a more viable partner for our neighbors, but also when our neighbors have these provisions on their side, also make it even easier to respond to multiple incidents in our community?
Yes, so a lot of our neighboring communities have the same issue as West Bloomfield, with whether it's areas without fire hydrants. The Commerce Fire Department, they do quite a bit with tanker training as well. So if we need to respond to their area or them to us, doing this training on a regular basis just makes it more efficient and safer for everybody involved.
And in terms of the necessity for this, how many tankers does the department have? How much of a need is it to have 3,000 gallons of water with you regularly when you're responding to these different calls?
So we're fortunate that we have a really good hydrant system here in West Bloomfield. So there's only a few areas where the tanker's truly needed. So we have one right now, which is perfect. We really don't need much more than that. And in a case where if we do, with our neighboring communities and the partnerships that we have with other fire departments, we're able to get the resources that we need really to combat any situation that arises.
Jeff Latkowski is with us. He is the training captain with the West Bloomfield Township Fire Department, which serves all 4 of our communities here in the greater West Bloomfield area. Captain Latkowski, we're seeing some pictures on our screen on civiccentertv.com from the training that happened at Fire Station number 3 over the weekend, whether it was attaching and utilizing fire hoses or as we saw in the previous picture, a small pool of water also being filled up, utilizing that tanker. What went into this training? What were you specifically working on developing your firefighters and learning how to use this tanker?
So in your last segment, you talked about, the Japanese tea ceremony. This is the traditional fire tea ceremony where we put the firemen into the tanker. All serious though is with the tanker, the dump tank that you see next to it, what we do is we take the water from the tanker, put it into that large pool, and then we're able to draft that water out into the engine, the fire truck that's on scene. And then the tanker can leave, fill up at the closest hydrant, and then continuously fill that bucket up where we're able to constantly use that to fight the fire.
And then in terms of what your firefighters are learning from this, what did they take away from these sorts of training sessions? This one seemed to be very specific to utilizing that tanker as a resource. How common is it that we have this more specified training for our firefighters?
It's one of those things where it doesn't happen often, but because it's a rarity, it's very important that we're proficient with it and that everyone is working as a team. So when it does arise, we're clean and we're effective, and it's really second nature. So fortunately, it's not something that is used all the time, but when it is needed, we have to make sure that we're ready for it.
Lastly, Captain Latkowski, how can the community help to not only provide the resources of our fire hydrants more easily to our fire department? We talked about that also, but to also provide the fire department with any aid when this is coming through and they do need to get a tanker on site. What can the community do to help the fire department?
Yeah, really the big one is really with any scene, whether it's a medical, a car crash, a fire, is really just keep those roads clear to allow the fire trucks, our ambulances, our tankers access to the scene. As people start kind of lining the streets or kind of blocking things off, it just makes it more difficult for us to get the resources that are needed on the emergency to take care of the situation. But as a whole, the citizens of West Bloomfield and the Tri-Cities area have always been outstanding in supporting us, and just we thank them.
This time of the year, a lot of people getting together with their friends and their family at their home. Sometimes it fills up their driveway and they end up parking in the road. That can have an impact when there's an emergency. Got to keep that in mind. Good advice from our friends at the West Bloomfield Township Fire Department. Captain Latkowski, anything else for us today?
Stay cool, drink water, and hope you enjoy the rest of your summer out there.